Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Daily Turnup. As always, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it so much. We got over 150 views for our last episode, which honestly, I think 150 is the benchmark. CK and I were talking earlier last week or late last week. It was like, hey, if we can get 100 views, that would be amazing. That's our benchmark. But you all have been absolutely amazing in listening, and we think 150 is the new benchmark. So thank you so much for that. And to no surprise to anyone, this week, I know we're doing a podcast a little early, has been crazy already. And I think that's just what's going to happen under Trump's America while he's president. We can almost say Trump's world because what he's doing is affecting everybody. So we're actually going to hit about, I think, 5 different topics. It might turn to 6. We might bring it down to 4. But we just want to hit a couple big things that are going on because there's so much going on that we got to talk about it. So, CK, are you ready for it?
I'm ready. Yeah, every topic that we're going to discuss today is something we've already had a deep dive into in a previous podcast. So I think we're just kind of doing like a "Where Are They Now" podcast.
Yeah, I think that is a great way to break this down. I don't know. There's a few things we haven't mentioned before. Like, we're going to talk a little bit about Syria. We might have mentioned them, but nothing into a great extent. But let's talk about the number one thing. Let's start off with the tariff war with Canada. And so I'm just going to give you a quick recap, and I'm going to turn it over to CK to really break some things down for us. So the new Ontario Premier Doug Ford, I think he just replace Justin Trudeau?
No, he's Ontario, so not Canada.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that. Well, anyways, this dude, Ford, he imposed a 25% surcharge on electricity exports to the United States, specific states being Michigan, Minnesota, and New York. And this measure targeted approximately 1.5 million U.S. households and businesses, aiming to generate at least like almost $300,000 daily. And Ford also hinted at the possibility of further actions, including a complete, yes, you heard that, a complete cutoff of electricity exports to the United States, which was just, I could not even imagine if Canada actually shut the power off to those 3 states. That would be completely unprecedented. But anyways, this was in response to Ontario's surcharge. President Donald Trump announced plans to double tariffs on Canada steel and aluminum, going from 25% to 50%. Following the U.S. tariff announcement, the Premier Ford suspended his 25% electricity surcharge, and the decision came after he sat down with U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, hopefully I said that name right, to engage in further discussions about trade relations. So this all happened in like 24, 48 hours, insane back and forth. And I think we learned one thing, and Trump's going to call you out. He is not going to back down. So, CK, I want to ask you this. What was Canada's play here? It seems like the U.S. called their bluff. And what power does Canada really have to try and match the United States if the United States says it's going to do something?
Yeah, well, I think one big thing is also China just levied 100% tariff on Canada.
Oh,
The
wow.
reason unknown. So Canada felt like it was about to get squeezed out from both sides, and also, yeah, playing chicken with Trump, not a great idea. Now, Doug Ford's not the prime minister. I think he gave his threat, but once it came down to pulling the trigger, like escalation into an actual trade war, I think the powers that be in Canada kind of told him to back off.
Yeah,
Because
do you think
again,
Justin Trudeau hopped in and said, yo, bro, no, you're not doing this. I already have a tough enough time with this guy. Don't make it worse for me.
Trudeau, and more, I think so. Although I will say it's interesting because Doug Ford is in the Conservative Party. Conservatives, and so what I think has been happening is the Liberal Party is they want to play, they want to get in a fight with Trump. Why? Because Trump has been associated with the conservative Pierre Poilievre,
Yes.
and they kind of go together. Poilievre has supported Trump on a lot of things. He has disavowed the tariffs and said he hates these tariffs.
Makes
However,
sense.
if Trump gets in a fight with Canada and loses popularity to Canada, Poilievre loses popularity as well. He goes down by
Oh,
association.
wow.
And so the powers that be, the current Liberal Party, I think they're trying to get Trump to start this fight in hopes that it helps in the election. So the polling in December 2024, 2 months ago, 3 months ago, conservatives were 45%, Liberal Party was 20%. Now the Conservative Party is 40%, Liberals are 30%.
So they're making that comeback.
I'll give you an even crazier stat. The odds to win the election next year since January of 2024 to February of 2025, so 13 months, the odds were 99% for the Conservative Party.
Okay.
For over 13 months, it didn't change. Now it's 82%. In the last 2 weeks, it's dropped 18%.
So do you think every time Trump says, hey, welcome 51st state, that is just killing the Canadian conservative shot at trying to win?
It's definitely hurting them. And I think the Liberal Party in Canada is saying, more of this because, and am I saying, politician would hurt their own people and their own economy to stay in power? Never. That would never happen. We would, politicians would never do something like over sensationalize a pandemic to tank an economy and ruin public opinion right before.
Never heard of her.
Unheard of.
Unheard of. Okay, then. So besides just the craziness that Canadian politics entails, which honestly I think your assessment, holds a lot of weight to it. Do you, when you go up against Trump and Trump says, hey, I want you to be the 51st state and I'm going to impose tariffs on you and I can basically shut down your country if I want to because, hey, I think 70% of Canada's trade is with the United States, so they're at a massive disadvantage to go head to head with the U.S. Who gets hurt? I'm assuming Canada gets hurt more in this trade war and to the point where they can't even really fight it back. They just kind of have to take what the U.S. gives them. Is there some truth to that, or is what Trump tweeted out on social or whatever his social media thing is saying, like, hey, you're tariffing dairy anywhere from 150 to 300%? Like, I'm not letting you get away with this trade stuff anymore. Who do you think is going to hurt in the long run in this trade war?
I think the answer is Canada, and they know that. But again, you have an election, so I don't think they really care. But also, does Trump care? Because he's not running again either. So he has a lot of chips, and he's not looking for a re-election. So who hurts more? I mean, right now, Canada keeps backing down. Every single time the threat is imposed, they ramp it up and back down. So it seems to reason that Canada knows that they can't win this game.
I like it. And so what do you really expect next to happen? Do you think we're just going to go back and forth for the foreseeable future? Or do you think, I don't know, I don't even know what the next move is here. Like to your point, Canada's backed down every single time. Do you think the United States is going to get to the point like, hey, you're going to have to do exactly what we want, secure your own border, and you're going to have to drop the tariffs you have against us? Do you think that's really the only way to move forward?
I honestly think there's going to be political games until October 2025, until the Canadian election. I think they're just going to continue to use this to gain advantage and continue to rise in the polls because right now it's working.
All right, fair enough. I like it. All right, so
after
next,
that, it depends who wins.
Oh yeah, then craziness. Full disclaimer though, I don't think Canada should be the 51st state. I actually don't think that's very controversial at all, but I am not rooting for that.
Probably not good for the Republican Party in the U.S. either.
I know.
If you add Canada, it will never vote Republican again.
Yeah,
this country will never do it.
Yeah, that's super, super true. So next up, let's transition over to the stock market. So over the past 48 hours, the U.S. stock market has experienced significant volatility, primarily due to escalating trade tensions, as we just discussed, and overall fears of a recession. The NASDAQ dropped 4%, which was its largest one-day loss in September of 2022. The S&P 500 fell 2.7%, and the Dow Jones average decreased by 2.1%. And that's approximately 890 points. You hear a percentage or two, you're like, that's probably not a big deal. Oh no, it's a big deal. And investors, basically said, "Hey, we're negatively impacted by President Donald Trump's comments over the weekend, where he acknowledged the possibility of a recession and emphasized a period of transition for the economy." Those remarks, coupled with the concerns over the administration's trade policies, fueled fears of economic slowdown. And so, CK, I think, wow, it's bold that Trump said, "Hey, a recession's possible." One, I low key respect it because it's being honest, and politicians are never honest. So I respect honesty. Not excited about a recession though, if that is the case. So what's the so what here? Are we just going to see the stock market go up and down based on whatever he tweets or Elon tweets, or if he's announcing a tariff in the morning, but in the afternoon he says, LOL, JK? Is this the new standard, or is this all just part of the art of the deal?
Yeah, that's a good question. Not really sure. A lot of people are speculating that the U.S. has a debt problem currently, and 7 trillion of the U.S. debt is maturing in 2025.
Oh,
So
wow.
a stock market crash would cause money to flow out of the stock market and into U.S. bonds. That would cause the bond prices to go up. And if bond prices go up, bond yields, so the interest rate of bonds, go down, uh, which would allow the government to refinance its 7 trillion debt at a lower interest rate. So a lot
Oh,
of
so
people
you think
saying
this is
this
part of
is
a big plan?
not me. I don't I don't know that much, but this is what a lot of people are saying. This is the game plan. And then, lower interest rate for debt would eventually cause the Fed to cut interest rates for the American people. Cutting interest rates for American people would cause people to buy more, which would cause, an economy boom. So like 4D chess workaround to grow the economy. I don't hate the plan. I do think that the move in like the last 30 years has been, if we notice the economy is slowing down, let's have the government pour money into the economy to propagate the
Yep.
stock market, creates the bubble, and that bubble eventually pops.
So how long do you think this would take though? Like, is this like a 2 year, 4 year, 6 year? How long is the time frame for this to go full circle?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I'll tell you what the problem is. If it is a 2 year, there's, you know, elections in 2026, and Trump can't afford to have a 2 year recession because he only has a 218 to 214 lead in the House, and that's a razor thin majority as it is. It's
Yeah.
worked for him thus far. Every single vote that's come down to it in both the House and the Senate, he's gotten what he wanted. Uh, but if he loses a majority, he will be 1/10 as effective combating. Like, the Democrat House will do everything they can to stop him.
So
And
with
so,
that, nope, you
yeah,
can go.
his last 2 years are pretty much done if he loses the House in 2026.
So how long do you think Americans are going to be along for this ride then? Right? There's only so much the average person's going to take, and you can call it short term thinking, but that's the reality of it. Like, at what point do you think the American people like, hey, I just want to go back to stability? I liked working from home. I like knowing the stock market was at least going to do better or stay the same. How long do you think they're going to stay on this ride then? Do you think Trump right now has a 2 year window, and then it's like, nope, back to the way things were?
I think he probably has a 1 year window to fix the economy, to fix the recession.
Jeez, no
Because
pressure.
because if you don't, like, a year from now, we are right into election season again. Maybe 15 months realistically. But if people have 15 months of hard times, and then, in the last 3 months it gets better, they're going to remember that in come election.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth there. So one thing we haven't actually talked a lot about is the U.S. southern border, and the Department of Homeland Security has rebranded the CBP One app as CB Home, or CBP Home, which, yeah, crazy rebrand. Introducing a self deportation feature, and this function allows undocumented immigrants to voluntarily be like, hey, I'm gonna go back at the hope or for the potential to return back to the United States legally. And so, stricter immigration policies under the Trump administration have led to a notable increase in migrants returning southward. And migrants that have already started going back to Colombia and Venezuela and haven't even tried to cross the United States border. And so, CK, I am actually surprised about how quiet the border talk is, how quiet our conversation outside of tariffs with Mexico is, especially when it comes to, labeling cartels as terrorist organizations. It's almost like there's so much noise going on. This is what's going on under the radar. Maybe that's on purpose. I don't know. Let's put on our tinfoil hats about it. But what have you heard? And the Trump administration, again, has been flying under the radar. So what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think it's going unheard because it's more or less problem solved. I mean, not problem solved, but like one of the few things that I would say has gone without a hiccup. You can talk about Doge, and Doge is, we were excited and then kind of standstill. You can talk about the Epstein and the JFK where we were excited and then, you know, annoyed, I would say is the best way to put it. The debt, hasn't touched it. So all of these promises he's made, the border, I would say you haven't heard of it because it's been working. Biden's last 3 months, he averages about 100K border crossings or border encounters a month, and those were his lowest months in his 4 years. In the month of February, there was about 8K border encounters. So we went from
Wow.
like 100K at a low to like 8K in month 2. Trump treated this like a war. He called them terrorists. He sent between 8 and 9,000 troops to the U.S. border and some big time equipment like strikers. And
Oh
so,
my
so
gosh.
he's taking this seriously, and I think it's showing.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I mean, I'm trying to think. Like the only things that I've really seen is, there's a fear about illegal immigrants getting rounded up, but I really haven't seen anything big, good or bad. I mean, I guess good or bad is relative to what you believe in. I've heard some things like Nebraska, if they take all the illegal immigrants, then they're not going to be able to harvest the food there. Honestly, I haven't fact checked it. I don't know how true it is. So, those that are listening, look it up. And I haven't heard anything about the cartels either. But CK, maybe your point is there's so much going on, it's working that the liberals, the CNN, the MSNBC, there's like, hey, that's not a fight we can win. Let's stick to Doge in Ukraine. At least we can get some support that way.
Yeah, I think deportations aren't as high as Trump had wanted in these sanctuary cities like New York and Chicago, but at least the faucet is closed. There's no new people coming in. If
Yes. Yep.
if that was the debt and like we didn't actually chip away at the 36 trillion debt, but at least we're not adding to the debt, we would be cheering. But that's not the. So I think you can cheer because he shut off the faucet. Let's treat other problems in the government like that as well.
Yeah. No. Well said. So we got two more topics left, and so let's head back to the Middle East for a minute. We've talked a little bit about the Middle East, I think, in like mid-January, but we really haven't talked about Syria. And so, in recent days, Syria has witnessed a surge in violence, leading to significant civilian casualties, including among them Christian communities. Clashes between Syrian security forces and loyalists of the deposed President Bashir al Assad have resulted in over 200 deaths. The conflict began with an attack that killed 13 security personnel, escalating into widespread violence that has affected various civilian populations. And so the fall of Assad, like his regime, was so surprising. Like no mainstream media was covering it like before as it was happening. It was like, oh, he just fell. Let's get a bunch of news cameras there. Like no one saw it coming. But one fear almost everyone had is that when a dictator falls, there is a power vacuum. It's lawless. They're still fighting. There's still like a civil war esque because there's a fight for power, and it seems like that is the case. That this is the continuation of the civil war. It's still that fight for power. And so, what can we expect moving forward in Syria? Are there just going to be civilian casualties? Are the extremists going to use this as an opportunity to kill anyone that doesn't believe in their belief in Islam? Are we just Is it just going to be chaotic for years to come? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, that's the easiest question you've given me on the turn up. What can we expect? It's like we've never done this before, right? We've never overthrown a government and then seen a power vacuum and then created a bigger mess than when it started. I mean, Saddam in Iraq, Gaddafi in Libya. Like, what could we expect? We can expect more of that. We can expect to be fighting some extremist group in Syria in 20 years, and that would be the very group that we created by getting rid of Assad. You can say Tulsi was an apologist or whatever, and throw out any anecdotes you want, but we aren't. This is what I have in my notes. We aren't good at this in all caps, and that's all you need to know.
Fair enough. I do want to throw out a disclaimer. I don't think we were the reason the Assad regime fell when it did, unless you got some insider information. But I know for certain Russia's not happy, and Russia's probably going to do two things. One, they're probably going to do everything they can to gain control of Syria again, and they're going to do absolutely everything they can to keep their ports. But to your point, the United States is phenomenal at winning a war and horrific at nation building.
Yeah, we didn't do anything. Wink, wink.
Yeah, okay, fair enough, fair enough. All right. All right, let's move on to our last topic, and that is Ukraine. And we've probably talked Ukraine more than just about anything else recently, and that's why we wanted to keep it to the end because some people, I don't know if you're still listening, thank you. We appreciate you immensely, but you're probably a little tired of hearing about Ukraine. But big news broke, so we felt like we had to cover it, and that is Ukraine and the United States have reached a ceasefire deal. Now, that deal, I'm still waiting. I haven't seen it. CK, maybe you have, and you could talk more about it. I haven't seen the extent to the deal, but essentially, hey, there's a 30-day ceasefire on the table. U.S. Ukraine on the same page. Now they got to bring it to Russia. And oh, by the way, there's a mineral deal coming. So basically, the United States played the hardest level of hardball with Ukraine, basically saying, hey, we're stopping weapons supplies. Oh, hey, we're not going to give you any of our military intelligence. How does it feel? And Ukraine is like, oh, Europe, you got our backs? Nah, no, not really. Ukraine's within what? CK, 3-4 days, like, oh shit, this shit sucks without the US. We cannot do it. So, CK, thoughts? Let me hear it.
Yeah, I don't have the full deal. Marco Rubio said, quote, "Today we've made an offer that the Ukrainians have accepted, which is to enter into a ceasefire and into immediate negotiations to end this conflict in a way that's enduring and sustainable. However, comma, not so fast. Putin has on multiple occasions said he does not want a short-term ceasefire. He wants an end to the war, but a 30-day ceasefire is a non-starter for him. Uh, in fact, Russia's I think their deputy State Department Viktor Sobolov, he said Russia will not agree to a 30-day ceasefire as it will only allow Ukraine to regroup and rearm. So
Oh.
yeah, we were playing hardball with Ukraine to get this, but it doesn't seem like Russia's on board. So I think we're going to see some hardball with Russia, or I don't know. Maybe someone said this in Russia, but Trump's already worked it. I don't know, but I don't think we can call it a deal yet. Although Ukraine has agreed.
Yes. So last week, everyone that didn't like Trump was basically saying that, hey, Trump's a puppet to Russia. So now we're at this point now where Russia's like, hey, we hate that. Do you think there's any way that Trump can work out a deal with them? Or do you think, hey, this is still going to go on for months, dragged out, and this is just the beginning of a long-term deal?
I think it will probably go on for months because I don't. I don't think it's going to be just such an easy solution.
That's fair. Hey, honestly, I'm on the same page with you. I think the big thing to come out of this is the United States is getting a mineral deal, hopefully, and that Ukraine kind of is reminded about how important having the United States as an ally is compared to relying on their European counterparts that just do not have the means and capabilities to help them. And so it's going to be brutal, but hopefully this is one step closer to peace. So, CK, what are your final thoughts on the day? What didn't we cover? What do you want to talk about that we missed?
Yeah, one big one today. Continued resolution just passed the House by a vote of 217 to 213. One Republican, Thomas Massey, voted against. One Democrat, Jared Golden of Maine, voted for. So now this heads to the Senate for a vote. I think they need 60 votes in the Senate, which they don't have by itself. But apparently, Mike Johnson is confident he has the Democrats because Mike Johnson sent the House home a day early to enjoy a long weekend. So
So what are they trying to get passed? What is this?
continuous resolution to keep the government open until end of September 2025, so fiscal year 25.
Oh
So
shit! What do you? Okay, whoa. What do you think the over under on this actually happening is? Are we going to see an actual government shutdown? Is that really feasible?
no, I
Okay.
think it will happen. The House just voted for it. I think the Senate will pass it because this is why. It is pretty much the exact same bill that was passed under Biden.
Oh really?
This is a Trump bill, a Trump endorsed bill, Mike Johnson written bill. It's the same thing. It adds 1.6 trillion in deficit spending,
Oh, don't say that.
and it pretty much funds all of the same things that was funded under Biden, including almost every single program that was addressed by Doge. All of the waste that Doge found, it's still funding it. The same.
You kidding? Do we live in a simulation? Is this real?
Why? I don't
What?
know. There's Tim Burchett. I think I might have killed that name. He was. Oh, everyone's attacking Thomas Massey for voting against it, but he said, "Oh, this is the first time in 7 years we voted to reduce spending in the size of the government." This is what he means by that. The bill took 13 billion away from uh, discretionary spending, added 6 billion to the DoD. So it was a net 7 billion less than the last bill. But it is 1.6 trillion in deficit spending. So the last bill was like 1.607 and this bill is 1.6 and they're saying we finally decreased. That's not a decrease, you morons.
There's things that happen in this world, and I seriously consider or question: do I live in a simulation? And this is one of those things where I'm like, oh man, maybe this is all just a joke, and some dude's playing a video game, and I'm just a character, because that is insane. So they're still trying to fund USAID. Like, is that still happening in
All of it.
programs like that?
All of it. It's the same bill. It's cookie cutter from the one under Biden. The same continued resolution passed.
So do we want this to pass then?
What's that?
I said, do we actually want this to pass then?
Trump endorsed it, and Trump has been blasting Thomas Massey. Said he's going to primary him. They tried to primary Massey in 2021, and he won in a landslide. You're not going to primary Thomas Massey, and I appreciate him for being the only Republican to stand up for fiscal conservative values.
Jeez. Wow. That is crazy. Well, CK, as always, I appreciate the insight. I think this is a really fun episode. We covered a lot of different topics. And for those of you still listening, I appreciate you listening so much. You have no idea. You're part of the 150. Yeah, maybe we should get t-shirts made that says the 150. We are small, but we are strong. I don't know. That's just so lame. I'm so sorry. But anyways, thank you all for listening so much. We really, really appreciate it. Please like, share, subscribe to the channel. Tell everyone you know. And if you only half liked it, still hit that like button. It helps the algorithm. And you know what? Comment too. We get a lot of bad comments. Love to see a good one. Be like, love the show. It would make us feel great about ourselves. I'm just kidding.
I like
Well,
the
not really.
bad comments.
It's more fun. Anyways, everyone, I hope you have a great rest of your day.